everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and as you probably are aware, today is kind of a special day. I'm going to be talking about my new and improved basic music theory course. So we're going to be talking about the course. I'll be giving you kind of a preview of what it's going to be about. We'll be learning some of the, I'll be showing you some of the concepts that we're going to be dealing with, so you can, decide if it's the right fit for you. And if it is, great. We look forward to having you there. And if if it's not the fit for you, at least maybe you'll learn something today that's still of use. So, thanks everyone checking in here, and love to see everyone here. So first of all, I want to know. I did send out some emails this morning, and most people here probably got two. You probably got one if you have already previously signed up for Basic Music Theory in the past, like the original version with a special discount there, and also if you're a gold member, you would have been told nothing left to do. If you're a gold member, gold level member, you're already in, so you're already covered. And also if you've signed up for other courses, I had like coupon codes and things. But then also you should have gotten the general announcement just saying, yes, the course is open, and here's some information about why I think it's special, being community powered. So I'm not going to necessarily repeat all that. But I also want to know if you've clicked the links and if things seem to be working, because, computers and stuff, right? Things can always happen. And I got at least one report of someone who wasn't able to log in. So I don't know what's going on with that. And so if anyone else has some issue where it says like it's trying to verify security or something like that, and then the screen just freezes, let me know if that's going on for anyone else, because I would like to be able to report that to the folks who run the administration over on Teachable, because that's where that login happens. All right, so what I want to do is talk some about what we're going to be dealing with in the course. So click any of the links, I guess, in the emails you got, or just the link right here at the top of the chat, the Basic Music Theory link. So you maybe just check those and make sure reasonable things happen. And yeah, so the thing is, when you say start now, it will say it's 100% complete, because I haven't put the lessons. The lessons are going to show up every week. So starting next week, new lessons will show up. So unfortunately right now, it kind of lies to you and tells you it's complete. It's not totally lying. There's no lessons, and you've completed all of those no lessons. So don't sweat that, but I will see if I can improve the messaging there at all. So what I'm going to do is flip over to show you what will be in the course. And so what I did here, if this works correctly, I copied the original Basic Music Theory course, made a copy of it so it's a separate course, and then I can add stuff and move stuff around. This is my view. So none of these lessons you would be seeing yet, because what's going to happen is these are going to drip. So this is part of what a cohort-based course typically does. A cohort-based course, meaning everyone's going through it together. So what's going to happen is every week I'm going to publish a few of these lessons, and then you can work at them on your own pace. But we're going to go kind of a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time on a batch of lessons, which you may recall is the same way we did the jazz piano holiday course that so many of you participated in. And I think the overall approach works great. It's going to be less hectic pace, I would say, because that material was so new to so many people, and I went through it pretty quickly. This material is going to be more familiar to more of you, but and I'm not going to go through it as quickly because I want to go deeper. My goal in this course. All right, let's talk about my goal here. My goal is to make sure that all this stuff that I call basic, that we really understand. It's one thing to say we know a major scale, but it's another thing to really know what it means for music to use that major scale. What does it mean to say if Bach wrote a prelude in D major? What does it mean that he wrote that prelude in D major? What relationship does that piece have to the scale, right? So this course doesn't necessarily get super deep into that, but I want to understand the concepts. I want to be understanding the terms of scale and key. We want to talk about, like, if Bach writes a prelude in D minor and you've learned that there's a natural minor and a melodic minor and a harmonic minor, and maybe you can't keep straight in your head which is which. I want to be the one who helps you finally get why there are those three flavors of minor scales, why they are called what they are called, and what it means. Like, did Bach use natural minor, or did he use melodic minor, or did he use harmonic minor? Spoiler alert, the answer is all of the above. It's not like you write a piece and say it's in natural minor or it's in harmonic minor. It's in minor, and it's going to pick and choose the different flavors, the different notes that make up these scales, situation by situation. So that's the kind of thing we're going to be talking about. So I want to go through and just give you an overview of what we're covering, and go a little more into detail into some of these topics. So that was just talking about scales, and we'll get to that. But I want to start by pointing out that so some of these things aren't actual lessons, they're just things for my own benefit here. But I do want to talk about this lesson on these lessons on music notation systems and staff notation. So this is sort of going to be an introductory set of lessons here that explains the basics of what it means to put music on a staff, to notate it, but to also point out that that is not the only way of notating music. If I go to this lesson, it's unfortunately going to show you kind of my fancy view here, but I think I can. Oh, I can't preview it because it's not published. Or can I? Can I publish? I can preview it anyhow. Great. So this music notation systems is also going to cover not just standard notation, but it's also going to talk about tablature. And I'm really kind of excited about this. I'm going to talk about Braille, and I'm going to try to keep talking about Braille because it's important. And I talk about accessibility a lot, and I talk about the accessibility within MuseScore and using a screen reader, but the most accessible format of most things for blind musicians or people in general is Braille, and there is a lovely format of Braille music that was invented by Louis Braille, and it's it's in widespread use, and I'm not going to be teaching people to use Braille necessarily, but I want you to appreciate what's in it. And here's my my secret goal. I would love to have some people get familiar enough with Braille to maybe help me translate my handouts into Braille. Right? So that's one of the things that I want to be doing here. So this is like a thing where, if you're like, yeah, I know all about standard notation, but gee, that Braille thing sounds kind of interesting. Let me see if I can dig into that. I'm going to be exploring, I'm going to be encouraging that sort of personal exploration where you might decide to get more into Braille and give you whatever support I can. So piano roll notation, I don't know any musicians that treat it as notation. It's a way of entering notes into software, but I don't think of it as a notation system. In other words, I've never seen anyone ever print it and read from it. Let's put it that way, or even read from it on screen. It's more of a computer entry format. Secret goal, no secret anymore. I know that song. Your secret goal's no secret anymore. Yeah, lovely song. And I'm also going to talk about some other formats, ABC and Lilypond, that are also text-based formats. And these are more like piano roll notation that are more about entry, data entry, but ABC is used also as a reading format. Like, people really do read ABC. So in any case, if you want to explore piano roll notation on your own, I will encourage that as well. So Dave, I've never heard of a musician who reads piano rolls. Again, I've seen it as an entry system into software, but I've never seen anyone actually try to treat it as a notation. If that's something that you think happens, then maybe you could do an investigation on that and present a report to everyone and see if other people want to explore that topic with you. So I will be encouraging that sort of exploration there. But I will just say that in my experience, I've never encountered anyone treating it as an actual notation system because it's not standardized. Every software has its own version of what a piano roll even is. The only thing that was standardized was the old-fashioned paper piano rolls, and I'm pretty sure that's not what you're talking about. So let's come back here and talk about some of the other things here. So the first main unit or the main section in the course is on pitch. And so the thing is, we think we know, and at some level, we do know the basics of, let me shrink this window down so I can get to the preview button a little easier. There's my preview button. We're going to talk about the note names here and how this all works. And by the way, every single lesson has one of these worksheets here. This worksheet you might recognize, this is on MuseScore.com. Well, this is just a MuseScore file. You can load it into MuseScore and you'll be able to play back all the examples in all the examples that I'll have, all the different scales, all the different chords, all the different things that I talk about will be on these worksheets, but they're not just paper worksheets, right? They're actual MuseScore files that you can load into MuseScore and then play the examples, click individual measures to hear those, etc. Just work with in general. And I even tried to set up this fancy thing here. I'm not sure how well this is going to work in MuseScore 4, but it was originally set up in MuseScore 3, and then you could just click on the piano key and hear the note. But of course, there's also a piano keyboard within MuseScore, so that's kind of, you don't really need this, but it's kind of cute. In any case, I'm talking about these note names and the fact that we also number the octaves, and you might be looking at that and going, yeah, I know this. But do you really? Do I really? The thing is, there's a lot of historical background to why we ended up with these 7 notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. In fact, why did I even start on C? Right, that's one of the first questions that people are ever going to ask about this, and then you forget that it was even ever a question. Well, I want to go back and ask that question and discuss it, and maybe be able to answer it. Why we have these 7 letters, but we keep thinking of C as the first note? Well, if we start on A, we get a different scale or a different mode. If I start on D and play those same notes, I get a different scale or mode, the Dorian mode you may have heard of. So we're not going to be like going really deep into, Renaissance music theory, but I want to give you an appreciation for what these different scales are, what these different modes are, why they led us to to have these 7 notes to play with, why they're colored white on the piano and the other notes are colored black. Or whatever colors they are, right? Originally it wasn't even ivory, it would have been like wooden keys and other things, so they'd be differently colored. But why there's that distinction between, these keys and those keys, why on wind instruments some of the notes you play just with your fingers on the holes of the instrument and some of them have all these side keys. Why is that even a thing? Well, there's good musical reasons for it. And I want to be exploring this. And so we're going to kind of review a little bit of the history of music here in talking about this. And we'll say, well, let's pretend we lived in an era where we didn't have those accidentals yet, because for hundreds of years, really, and perhaps even thousands, really the 7 diatonic pitches were really it. And people made a ton of music before they really started thinking about accidentals, or before they started formalizing what these accidentals even were. So I want to do this. I want to explore music making using just those pitches and talk about what it means to create music without all those accidentals, and what it means to create music using the Dorian mode versus the Aeolian mode versus the Ionian mode, and have you actually try to create some music this way and get that discussion going. So I say all this to point out that this lesson is lesson number 1 of the first section, the first full section after that introductory one, and it's just on note names. And you might think, oh my God, that's the simplest thing in the world. I learned that when I was 7 years old. Yeah, but we're going to go deep. That's my point here. We're going deep into these subjects so that, if you're just brand new to this, then just getting up to speed and knowing the note names, great. But if you're already familiar with that, you're going to have that room. You're going to have that room to go deeper. We're going to have projects and so forth. So yes, you're absolutely right, Colleen, that our blind musicians, the white versus black key isn't going to be as relevant a distinction as the how they're the raised nature of those black keys. When I took piano lessons as a kid, my piano teacher had a harpsichord in the living room also, and we would play on that sometimes. And the keys were wood stained brown. So the white keys were brown, but the black keys were still black. That was my recollection. But I've also seen harpsichords that have are colored in different ways entirely. So the point is here, we're talking about pitch, but we're getting deep into this. Now, if I say complete and continue on here, it's going to say I'm done because, again, it thinks that there's nothing in this course yet because I haven't published these lessons yet. But okay, so that's like talking some about pitch. When we talk about accidentals, the same issues are going to come up. If we talk about accidentals, and I'm not going to go through every single lesson here, there's dozens of them, but I want to highlight a few. If we talk about accidentals, yes, I'm going to talk about, how these black keys, how these accidentals get named, but I also want to talk about, why they exist. Historically speaking, these aren't all created equal. Right? Some of these accidentals came about before others. We didn't just have 7 keys to play with, and then one day someone said, hey, let's add 5 more. It didn't work out that way. It was like, these 7 are really nice, but it would be kind of nice if we had a C sharp. Because if we had a C sharp, then when we're playing our Dorian music here, we could have music we could have a C sharp leading to that D. And people really liked the sound of that half step into the final note. And so what happened is the accidentals came about in kind of the order that people needed them to do this. So when playing in D, you have all the white notes, and you're playing with the white notes, and then at some point you want that half step there. The name of the course officially is Basic Music Theory. So what you'll also see is Basic Music Theory Original in parentheses. Well, that's the old version, right? So I as I said, I actually just this morning, or was it last night, made the copy of the course. So there's Basic Music Original, Basic Music, and the other Basic Music Theory Original, and just Basic Music Theory. So Basic Music Theory is the name of the course, and that is the cohort version. The original version still exists, but I've sort of also So if you're in the original, that would explain why you're. I also turned off all the lessons there temporarily, but I'm going to restore them shortly. But yeah, you don't want to be in the original version. So and I will be sending out mail because the thing is, when you're talking about these original versus not original, that tells me that you are over on the school site, which is where you need to go to sign up. So if I say Basic Theory here, what? Oh, I forgot the P. So this is the Basic Theory course page here, but then if I click under My Courses, actually if I click under My Courses here, I think I'm going to see both versions. I'm going to see the original version and the basic music and the new version because I'm enrolled in both. Depending on what you're enrolled in, you'll see different things here. So anyhow, I want to get kind of deeper into that subject of where these accidentals are coming from, and then also, experiment with that. Experiment with improvising. Experiment experiment with composing, gradually introducing. So no, you don't need to sign up if you're gold level. And everyone who's gold level should have gotten an email this morning explaining that. But it's possible that some people like disabled certain, like there's like checkboxes that you can say, no, I don't want to get certain kinds of emails. And if you enabled one of those options, then you might have missed out on that email. But in fact, if you try to go to the basic theory page there that I was just on, let me get back there. If I go to the basic music theory page, I have to go to P again. Sorry, because I'm already enrolled, so it doesn't want to show me the sales page. Because I know some people got that email because I got some correspondence about it. At the bottom here, you will normally see the enroll options here, right? And you'll see an option to just enroll in basic music theory, but you'll also see the option to do the gold level membership. And we'll talk more about those options as you go along. Naps can interfere. So in any case, you'll see these two options if you're not already enrolled. If you are already enrolled, you won't see these options. You'll instead see a box that says, you're already enrolled, just look. So anyhow, that's what's going on there. So anyhow, let me come back to talking about the accidental thing. So we're going to experiment with that. We're going to learn to read treble and bass clef. If you're not already familiar with bass clef, because you mostly play a treble clef instrument, this is your opportunity to start working on bass clef. It's also the C clefs, right? If you're not comfortable with alto or tenor clef, use this as an opportunity to get better at the C clefs, right? So by the C clefs, I mean the alto clef and the tenor clef. And the alto clef we get to see in every week when we start the music master class. The viola reads alto clef. That's this guy. The middle line here is actually middle C. So this note down here is not a D like you might be thinking if you read treble clef. It's not an F as you might be thinking if you mostly read bass clef. It is in fact an E. And so getting good at reading that, I'm not going to say I'm good at it, but I want to teach you how it works and how to get better at it if you choose, and then you can try to work it, try to practice, use this as an opportunity to practice viola, or not viola specifically, but practice alto clef. So that is the pitch unit. So I'm going to go back now and then talk about the next unit. The next unit is another one of these ones that you might think at first, gee, I already know all this stuff. What's he talking about it for? Rhythm. I'm going to be talking about, note and rest values here, meaning quarter notes versus half notes. Well, okay, so first of all, if you're in the UK, you know the words crotchet and quaver, or minim. I don't even know if that's how you pronounced it. Minim or minim. I guess it's minim. That makes more sense to me. But those terms, you might not be as familiar with the quarter note and half note terms. So that would be good to get familiar with. But it would be really nice if the rest of us all knew crotchets and quavers and minims also. That's like a useful thing for people to know, is the different terms for the durations of these notes. There's also in Spanish different terms still. They just refer to them as white notes and black notes, I think. So I'm also going to talk about things like meter. And the thing is, you might think you know meter because you know what 4/4 is and you know what 3/4 is. And then you sort of say, well, 6/8, I kind of sort of know, but do you really know 6/8? And maybe you do. But like the fact that in 6/8, technically, yes, that means 6/8 notes in a measure, but we don't actually deal with it that way, right? 6/8 is like secret code. That means there's actually 2 beats in the measure, but each beat is divided into thirds. So maybe you sort of figured out that secret code with regard to 6/8, but maybe you don't know how to apply that to other time signatures, to know when that secret code applies, when it doesn't. And more importantly, what does that mean in terms of how we beam eighth notes, right? Eighth notes are normally beamed in groups of 2, but in 6/8, they're going to be beamed in groups of 3. Or I should say they're beamed in groups of 2 or groups of 4. Well, that kind of stuff, these rules for how we actually notate music based on the meter we're in, how we count that music. I want to be exploring this, right? I want to make sure that people are solid on this. MuseScore does a decent job of getting this stuff right by default. But not always. There's definitely times when you're going to need to override the beaming in MuseScore, and there's also going to be times when you might want to write something out by hand, and you're going to want to know these rules for how this stuff works. And so I want to be teaching you that. I want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with that. So I've got lessons on that, but in my experience, those are the hardest lessons in the course because it's so well, it's not like rocket science complicated, but it really requires you to think about music in maybe a different way than you've been thinking about it if you haven't dealt with this sort of stuff before about these rules for how notes get beamed. So, and not just the beaming, but also when you have to break up a half note into an eighth note tied to a dotted eighth and things like that. There's different situations where you need to break up notes with ties. And those rules are subtle and complex, but crucially important to make your music readable. So I want to make sure that people understand these rules, understand when they might need to override something that MuseScore does, understand why MuseScore is doing what it's doing, and understand how to write this stuff out yourself. And also, and here's the big thing, understand that the better you really grasp these rules that we'll be talking about, the better your sight reading will become. You'll become better at sight reading when you understand the principles, why they beamed these notes the way they did. Because then you will be able to step back and look at the bigger picture and not have to read every note one at a time, but instead pick up the patterns inherent in how it's beamed, in how notes are broken up with ties. These give you important clues to sight read rhythms. And it's the difference between being a good sight reader and not being a good sight reader is how well you can take advantage of those sorts of cues. So I want to be teaching that. And then we're going to be dealing with ear training, right? I want you to be able to clap out these rhythms, and then I want you to be able to transcribe them. We'll be listening to music and writing out the rhythms. And, we did a session on that several months ago. We did a couple different sessions on it, but we're going to do more sessions like that, right? We're going to do more of this sort of rhythmic dictation, more of this sort of sight singing stuff. We're going to do all sorts of these collaborative activities using this masterclass as part of our venue for that. But, we'll also have the community, the ability to just post things there, post videos of yourself, or I can post videos, demonstrations, and so forth. So we're going to be getting deeper into this subject of rhythm, is what I'm saying here. So that's the second section. So we had pitch, we had rhythm. The next section is just more about notation. And frankly, I'm going to de-emphasize this section here because music theory isn't music notation. I mean, you have to learn music notation in order to be able to communicate with other musicians. Generally speaking, you'll need to use written notation, and I'm going to be using written notation. But this section just has like other miscellaneous topics like, well, this is what dynamic markings are. These are ornaments. This stuff isn't music theory, right? This stuff is how to read music. And so the lessons are there, and you'll be welcome to go through them and ask questions about them, and we can talk about them some. But I'm not going to dwell on these topics. Who could ask for anything? Yeah, I got rhythm. Oh yeah, I got rhythm. There you go. I got to say, what did I say that triggered that line? But I must have said, yeah, rhythm. So yes, the idea here is that I want to show you everything that you need to know about notation to be able to read it, but not necessarily teach you to read well, right? That's something you do kind of on your own if you're not already there. But I do want to make sure you have the tools, so that's there. All right, now we're going to get into the next few sections of the course. The major scales and keys is going to literally go through the different scales and keys. So if we take a look at major scales here, and so I'm showing you, by the way, I'm focusing on the handout here because now I'm talking, but what you'll see is that the lessons themselves are video based, right? It's me talking through using that handout as a demonstration, sometimes other demonstrations also, but it's me talking through the material in the handout. The material in the handout is a great reminder. And so, you watch the video and hear me explain things in detail. The handouts are organized the way most of my courses are at this point, where it's kind of bullet points. And actually, I'm going to give you a little insight into why these handouts are arranged this way. Some of you have heard this before, but it bears repeating. It has everything to do with limitations of MuseScore, but also on accessibility. The idea is MuseScore doesn't let you have big paragraphs of text very easily, right? I mean, you can have a big paragraph of text in a score, in MuseScore, but it doesn't do word wrap. It doesn't have fancy formatting, right? So if you're trying to build a textbook within MuseScore entirely, it's kind of disappointing. You can create the music examples in MuseScore and then copy and, you can screenshot them and stick them into a Word document, but then you can't play that Word document. Well, I wanted these handouts to be interactive. I wanted you to be able to load the handout into MuseScore and play the examples directly. Like right here, if you want to hear this E major scale, I can just hit the play button and it plays that E major scale. There you go. So, and that's not even MuseScore, right? This is on MuseScore.com, but you'll be able to download these and load them into MuseScore and hear the different, all the different examples and work with them. So I knew I wanted the handouts to be in MuseScore, but I also knew that working with the text was kind of a pain. So I hit on this idea that if I do bullet points like this, if I organize my text as bullet points, it eliminates the problem of word wrap because my bullet points are one line long. I will not let a sentence extend past the width of the page. If I do, that's not a bullet point, that's a paragraph. So I'm organizing by bullet points. So it eliminates the word wrap problem. It forces me to be concise. And you all know that conciseness is not normally my strong suit, right? When I'm doing these sessions, I ramble, I go off on tangents, I do things. These handouts are focused, right? They are bullet point by bullet point, and the way I look at this is if you had a textbook that's going into all this detail, and then you've got that yellow highlighter pen, and you just highlight the important sentences. That's what's in these handouts. It's the sentences you would have highlighted if I had written big paragraphs. So then, in the videos I go off and talk at more detail. But the handout allows me to be much more focused than you're accustomed to seeing me during these live sessions. Also, there's just a different vibe. I get kind of hyperactive in these live sessions, but I'm much more calm. And the notes in a major scale. I'm much more relaxed and to the point in the videos, I would say. You've probably noticed that in any of my other courses if you've done them. So there's the other thing I want to point out is other than the video, there's worksheets, right? So the worksheet, if I click this worksheet, is it going to take me to MuseScore.com? Yeah. So there's worksheets here where then you get to write in the answers yourself, right? So all these worksheets are provided, and again, they're in MuseScore format, so if you want to complete them in MuseScore, you can. And when I talk about this being accessible, like I developed this course while I had a blind student in my class at a university where I was teaching, where I kind of synchronized my development of this course with the syllabus of that class that I was teaching. And so she needed to go through this stuff, and she needed to be able to complete the same exercises. Well, Braille is all well and good for reading if you're blind. It's not so good for writing. I mean, yes, there's machines that let you write Braille, but it's not convenient. It's not a convenient process. It's much more convenient for a blind musician wanting to write music to use software. So we, kind of worked out a system where I would create these scores here with empty things, and she was able to fill them out. Sometimes there's invisible instructions here, so the screen reader could read more instructions than you're seeing on here to kind of help a blind musician fill out the worksheet. So in any case, there's worksheets here, but you could just print them out and fill them out by hand, or just think through them and say, yeah, I think I know that, right? So, and there's answers for the worksheets too. So if I click on the answers, then you'll see this thing filled in with the answers. So we don't have to spend all of Music Masterclass saying, hey, what did you get for number 17 on worksheet 3? You can find out what the answer is, but then we can talk about whether, why that's the right answer, or if there's any mistakes. I think any of the mistakes have probably been fixed by now because I've gotten enough feedback over the years. But so that's major scales. And so, yes, there's the major scales themselves, but when we talk about the major keys, as opposed to scales, well, what's the difference between a major scale and a major key anyhow? What's the difference between a scale and a key? Well, I'm giving examples here, talking what does it mean for music to be in a key of E flat? Here's an E flat scale. If I play this, I play that melody for you. How would you know that was in the key of E flat? Well, you've got some really good clues. All the notes come from E flat. It starts on E flat. It ends on E flat. But there's more to it than that. And those are some of the things we're going to talk about. How you can listen to music. I'm not talking about perfect pitch. I'm not talking about listen to music and go, oh, that was an E flat. But once you've figured out that these are the notes, how would you be able to analyze those notes and say, oh, the key was E flat? Because there's other keys that have those same notes in them. This idea that we're going to sort of understand the relationship of the key of a piece to the scale, this is the sort of thing that you don't typically get when you first learn about scales. You just learn it's a set of notes to play them in that order. Why? Because I told you to. I don't care if you can play them in that order. I care, can you make music with that? And can you recognize when other people have used that so you understand what key we're in, so that then we're on the same page when it comes on to, talking about anything else, talking about harmony, which is, the subject of the next course. But the first step is, can we agree if we look at a piece without a key signature, just based on the notes that are there, or based on hearing it and transcribing those notes, can we understand what key we're in? So you may also remember, ear training wise, we did these exercises involving, I would play a melody and you would try to write down that melody. Well, we're going to be revisiting that, making sure that we can get melodies by ear, write them down by ear, play them by ear, play them without writing them down, but just echoing it back. These are important skills for your musical development. Otherwise, you are very much locked into some sort of like paper and pencil exercise if you don't have that connection with what's going on in your ear. So ear training is not really something that I focused on in the original version of this course because it was just pre-recorded videos, no easy way for me to be giving feedback. We didn't have the live sessions or anything like that. But now that that's the case, and we have the whole community thing built around it, we're going to be dealing much more with this ear aspect of things, how to really understand these concepts based on, what they sound like. So, major scale, there's one thing to just know your major scales, but it's kind of another thing to understand what does that really mean for music. By the way, you also see these musictheory.net exercises. These are kind of cool. Actually, let me do this one here. The musictheory.net is a cool website that's easy to get lost in because it'll generate all sorts of random exercises for you, like the one that we see here. And so the thing is, there's a zillion exercises, but then how do you know, there's too much. If you just go to that website, there's too much information. So what I'm doing here is giving you focused exercises that relate directly to the material that you just learned. So if we're talking about key signatures and how to know which key signatures go with which key, you watch the preceding lesson and then you can answer the question here. You all know the answer? G, right? Yeah. Oh, and as soon as I get the right answer, it just fills it in. If I get the wrong answer, it's going to kind of go, oh, that's not right. It's highlighted in red, and you got to keep trying until you get it right, and then it goes on. So anyhow, that's musictheory.net. That's not my thing, but my integration of it, customizing these exercises so that they're showing you things relevant to the specific lessons. That's one of the nice things in this course is that you get that kind of practice. Okay, so that was major scales and keys. So then there's also a section on minor scales and keys. But before we get to the minor scales, I talk about chromatic scales and intervals. And this is actually a good question if anyone wanted to, ask and then discuss further. Why do I talk about chromatic scales and intervals before I talk about minor scales? Well, the answer is I don't have to, right? I could have talked about minor scales and then talked about chromatic scales and intervals. But the thing is, the language that I wanted to use to talk about minor scales kind of required me to talk about chromaticism and intervals first. So it might have been possible to do it the other way around, but in any case, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to talk about the introduction of chromaticism. We're going to talk about the fact that we have not just an E-flat scale, but that we can put other notes into that scale, and we'll be looking at how that works, how we are adding notes to our major scale. And that's what chromaticism is about. And I must have missed something from Bob here, unless it was a while ago. But if it was a good point, then I'm glad you made it, Bob. So yeah, we talk about chromaticism, but the big thing in this chapter that really takes the most effort is talking about interval construction, which is really an annoying topic. There's no way around it. If music theory for you has this association of calculating, what a minor seventh below D sharp is and why the answer has to be spelled a particular way and not the other way, yeah, this is the section where we get into that. And it's an unfortunate fact. So let me talk about that more, but first I want to address, Dawn, your question. You accidentally deleted an email. So the discounted price is going to depend on which discount you actually got. So I will contact me offline. Go over to the direct message thing in the community and send me a direct message, or maybe I'll try to remember if you don't. But if you do that, I will look up your account and see what your thing is, because I don't want to get into those details. There's if you had previously paid full price for basic music theory versus if you had previously gotten basic music theory as part of a bundle versus if you hadn't ever bought music theory but you had bought some other course. There's different, and then if you're a gold level member, the discount it's free. So yeah, I want to be fair to everyone, and including myself is kind of the goal here. So that's my short answer for you there. I don't have a direct answer, but that is the best answer I can give. This business here of talking about how we're going to define intervals above and below different pitches, it's a pain in the butt. There's no getting around it. It's really hard to figure out what is a minor sixth below C sharp, and realizing that the answer has to be spelled E sharp and not F. Otherwise, it would have been an augmented fifth, right? So these, and then there's the whole ear training aspect of it. If I play this, can you recognize that as a minor sixth, or do you think it's a perfect fifth, or do you think it's a major sixth, or whatever? The amount of time spent on that is way, way out of proportion with its importance. But its importance is not zero. So we are going to spend some time on it. But we're not going to spend as much time on that as it probably occupies in your brain if you've ever tried to go through a traditional music theory course before, where it seems like, not to oversimplify things, but I have a sense that most people who go through a course like this remember blah 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 intervals, blah blah blah, and that's really the thing that they remember. Just like if you go through a harmony course, you remember blah 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 parallel fifths, blah blah blah, right? You just remember spending an inordinate amount of time obsessing about parallel fifths in a harmony course. In this basic theory course, we don't get into that topic. What we learn what perfect fifths are, and so the amount of time that you probably remember obsessing about intervals, yeah, we're not going to do as much as that. Just like in my harmony course, I don't dwell on parallel fifths as much as some people do, but it's stuff to learn. Definitely stuff to learn. So So yeah, I've got my own methods of talking about, how you might want to learn that. And, everyone has their own different methods. And uh, everyone's got their own methods of learning how to do these intervals. So you've got something that works for you. Definitely don't let me confuse you. But if you've never succeeded well, by all means, give my methods a shot. And so we'll be dealing with that. And then we'll get to do things like create music using these intervals, right? I want to put this stuff into practice so it's not this boring, can I hear what that interval is, or can I spell this thing? That's not music. That's like nomenclature and spelling and calculations. Let's talk about how we're going to make music using these things. So, Michael, it should work totally fine because it is just a website. So, the website works perfectly fine on Chrome. I can't imagine it wouldn't work on Safari. So it should work. That's all I can say. But yeah, they do have an iPad app also, but don't use the app. Just use the regular browser-based thing. In any case, when you're in the course, you'll be able to. When you're in the course, the exercises just show up, embedded widgets there, so it should just magically work. And if not, we'll figure it out. So there you go. So this whole business about intervals and stuff, yeah, we're going to have to deal with, but I promise it's not that important. What is important is understanding things like consonance and dissonance. Which intervals are considered consonant, like that one, which are considered dissonant, like that one. Sometimes that's obvious, sometimes it's less obvious. And then what does that mean? What is it? Dissonant doesn't mean, oh, don't use this thing. It means it creates tension. Music has to have tension. We want tension. We want tension so we can resolve it. Thanks, by the way, for the link there, Dawn. Yeah, it should work fine on a Mac, I would imagine. Yeah, we want tension in our music. We want dissonance, but we want to control how much of it there is, right? And I often make the analogy to movies. You want there to be some point of tension in that movie. You want there to be a little cliffhanger scene that then gets resolved later. Will they or won't they? Will he or won't he? Kinds of things. Oh my God, what's going to happen here? Okay, so me, Star Trek geek here. Tonight will be the third, fourth, whichever the next episode of Picard. I mean, it's on now. Some of you may have already seen it if you're into it. But tonight I will be watching the next episode of Picard. And as it left, Riker and Picard just got in this big fight. I mean, these are like two people who are really pretty close, and yeah, they might disagree on stuff, but they got into a major fight at the end of last episode, and there's like a little cliffhanger here. And what does it do? It makes me really want to watch tonight to see how that resolves. What's going on? Is one of them actually a changeling? Is it a trick? Is it a trap to find the changeling? I don't know. There's all sorts of things. Is it a fake Riker? Is it that other Riker from the transporter accident? Right? There's all these questions going in my mind. This tension the dissonance of the conclusion of the last episode created. My mind is enjoying this tension. If it just ended with a happy ending, I'd like, I could either watch tonight or not. But now I gotta watch tonight because I need to know how that thing resolves. This idea of building tension and resolving it is crucial to creating interesting music. And so really understanding how consonance and dissonance work in that respect, well, this requires some understanding of this business of intervals and chromaticism. So when I talk about intervals, my goal isn't to make sure that you spell every interval correctly, which, yeah, that would be nice. My goal is to make sure you understand what's actually going on so we can make use of this stuff. And yeah, we'll also deal with the whole question about transposition, how we can take music like that and then play it in another key. And then also the fact that if I want to pick up my clarinet over here, which I'm not going to do because it's not in good shape, if I want it, I'm not going to start on an E flat. I got to start on an F because I need to know that that's how clarinets transpose, right? So all this stuff is all wrapped up in this section. So again, you might know what a chromatic scale is. You can play all those half steps. You might be able to name your intervals kind of sort of if you think about it hard enough. But when I talk about going deep, this is what I mean about going deeper into this subject matter. All right, 2 sections left. The next section here, minor scales and keys, and this is the one I kind of talked about a little bit at the beginning. Yes, there's different types of minor keys, and when I talk about this one, natural minor key, natural minor scales, I'm not just talking about the actual natural minor. When I'm using the term natural minor here, I'm using it in a more general sense, and also including Dorian mode, and also including Phrygian mode, which is sort of a non-traditional way of looking at this, except it's actually much more in keeping with a Renaissance way of looking at this. The idea that these modes were of roughly equal importance, at least Aeolian and Dorian were roughly equal importance, and it wasn't until the Baroque that Dorian sort of started to get stomped out and left on the shoulder, while Aeolian mode became the natural minor, and Dorian is somehow unnatural or something. I don't know. But through most of recorded history, Aeolian and Dorian were of equal importance. Well, I want to explore that. I want to talk about what the Dorian mode is, why it exists, what music, how music used it back in the day, 1500s. But also how we might use this today, because as you may be aware, Dorian and all these modes really had a big comeback mid-20th century with jazz and then rock musicians deciding, hey, these are great scales for improvising. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about using these modes both in their original historical context, but also how we use these modes in a modern context. So at this point, your head might be spinning. Wait a minute, how are we going to learn all this? There's only, but this is why we're taking a few months. We're going to take 3 months to do this, and it's a lot of material, and not all of it will click in for everyone, but some of it is like you probably already know a good chunk of it. So you get to spend more on the stuff that excites you, the stuff that challenges you, right? And a lot of the stuff maybe just sort of, okay, that's fine, but I'm going to focus on this thing. And that is great. That's what I'm looking for here. And the beauty of the community is people can challenge each other. People who are like interested in a particular subtopic can have individual threads there, chats. We're going to have, by the way, a study hall. I mentioned this in one of the messages somewhere. Study hall is basically an open Zoom room. It's not Zoom, it's this other thing that's basically just there that I don't need to be there for. People can just check in and hang out and talk. And so we'll schedule particular times when, on an organized basis. Hey, if everyone wants to come by, Friday at 3 p.m. or whatever it is, you can all come and hang out and talk to each other. But you'd also be welcome to just on your own decide, hey, I want to get together with George and let's go use that study hall. So, I'm using the analogy of an actual room in a university or something that might be available for that. So, speaking of rooms in universities, before I talk about the last section, I do want to talk a little bit more about my original impetus in creating this course. So again, remember I had that blind student, Elizabeth, who I've talked about, in some of my other things, in that theory course that I was teaching. That theory course I was teaching was a course that many universities have, and they all call it something different. And they all sort of treat it differently. When I was an undergraduate, there was a course that was called Music Theory for Non-Majors or something, and they wanted me to take that because I was a math major. But I was like, no, I don't want to do that because that's going to be too basic for me. I want the real music theory thing. But a lot of people coming in as music majors are, not as familiar with all of the music theory that they should be going in. So what happens is you have this pretest or an audition, right, to get into music school, and they check to see, do you know certain things? But realistically, universities being, businesses, they're not going to turn you down if you don't know everything you need. How often do I spill coffee on my keys? Did I almost do it? Never happened. But I have spilt on other things for sure. So, The idea is you're going to take this pretest, and do this audition to get into the music school, and if the only thing holding you back, if they're like, yeah, this person's basically a good enough musician, we're ready to take them on, but the only thing holding you back is you don't know as much theory as they think you should going in, everyone has some version of a basic music theory course that's there to get you up to speed. So that is what this course originally was. This course was the Get People Up to Speed course to prepare them for Music Theory 1. So as it turned out in my course there, I mean, Elizabeth already knew this stuff, but she couldn't like prove it. We didn't have the language, to allow a blind student to pass the test. And she needed to learn to read music because, as a blind musician, that just wasn't part of her experience. And so part of what we did was teach that. So one of the things that I do in this course is I think of it as that. It's the course to prepare you to become a music major. But as you're hearing here, we now have the opportunity to go so much deeper. These things that I'm talking about, how Dorian is used in practice, and what was going on in the Renaissance to make Aeolian and Dorian really common, make Phrygian less common but also important. Yeah, this stuff is great to talk about. No one entering college is expected to know that. So we're going much deeper than just college prep here. But that's the foundation of what we're talking about. It's the stuff that you're expected to know coming into college, and then the stuff that would be really cool if you got to explore your first year, but you don't. You have to you waste your first year doing intervals, basically. I'm being somewhat facetious, but yeah, way too much of your first year of college music theory is obsessing about intervals and parallel fifths and not interesting things, not creative things. So yeah, for minor scales, we'll be talking about these different minor scales, and of course, harmonic minor and melodic minor, and why they exist, and how they all relate. So question, are these sessions recorded? So yeah, first of all, these music master classes, yes, absolutely. These are recorded as well. You'll find these in the archives if you go over to the, can I get there easily from here? I don't know if I can get there easily from here or not. Somewhere I have an open window, but if you go to the left sidebar, you should find, it's not the right window. Yeah, so I don't know how to find the window. Yeah, now I just lost the window I actually need. So if you go to this left sidebar, not this one, but the one, on the community page, you'll see the archives for Music Masterclass. So yeah, a lot of the live sessions that I do will be just the Music Masterclass, will be devoted to this material. But all the videos, like in this lesson here, this lesson on the minor scale, it's already recorded. It's right here. I can play it right now. Minor scale. In this lesson, we're going to look at the natural minor scales, which That's recorded the scales me talking. That you can form just using the 7 So there you go. So and that's me talking at my my relaxed tone of voice there. So all these are recorded lessons. So the idea is that you can consume the material at whatever schedule you want, but I'm only going to release it in batches so that, every week or two is a new batch of lessons, and then you can watch them anytime you want during that week. Start working on the assignments, those worksheets, the projects I give, because I said we're going to do improv projects, we'll do transcription projects, we'll do composition projects, etc. So you work on those, at your leisure, but will kind of stay together from week to week. So the final section of the course is on chords. And so, yes, we want to know our triads, major triads. We want to know minor triad, diminished triad, augmented triad. We want to know our 7th chords, major chord, major 7th chord, dominant 7th chord, minor 7th chord, minor with major 7, half diminished, also known as minor 7 flat 5, fully diminished. You want to learn all these chords. And this is where it starts to be like people who are going, yeah, I already know this stuff, this extra stuff sounds useful, but I already know the basics. Here's where people might be starting to fall off and going, ooh, I really barely know my major and minor triads, those other ones aren't as comfortable for me. And here's where, yeah, you're going to get it. I don't mean you're going to get it. No, you're going to achieve it. I'm going to show you this material in here, and you're going to learn it. And you're going to learn all those triads, you're going to learn all those 7th chords, you're going to learn about chord symbols, things, when we talk about sharp 11s, you're going to learn what those things are. You're going to learn how to attach Roman numerals to chords. So when people talk about the 4 chord or the minor 4 chord, like I talk about so much in my harmony course, you'll understand those things. The idea of inversions and voicing. So Susan, yes, it's going to use the original lessons. The way it's augmented is me adding additional lessons to it, which I will be doing, but also every week during this music masterclass, I will be providing additional material and giving feedback on, the work that people are doing, and we'll be exploring topics in that way. But there'll also be some additional pre-recorded lessons. But all the original pre-recorded lessons will still be available and will still form kind of the core of the course. But it's what's available through these live streams, through the study hall, through the community in general, through the extra stuff that I'm going to post in the community. That's where the extra value here of this, community-powered course. We're going to go so far beyond what was in those original pre-recorded lessons. So this lesson here is the last one really I want to focus on here, because it's sort of another one of these like things that you learn but you don't learn. Everyone learns C chord, root position, first inversion, second inversion. And so you learn that this is second inversion, and you think it has to be those notes in that order. But no, it's not. You're going to learn that this is also second inversion, and that this is also second inversion. You'll learn why, what an inversion is about. It's not about what note's on top, it's about what note's on the bottom. And we'll learn a little bit about why we might spread these notes out in different ways. We'll learn a little bit about why these different inversions are important to know about. This is all material that starts to set up the harmony course to follow. So this is laying the foundation for the harmony course. So Paul, yes, your question about going through the lesson, that's basically the idea. You go through the lessons on your own, and then every Thursday we do these music masterclasses, which are recorded if you can't make them, but we'll also have those study hall sessions, and I will probably announce certain times when I will do additional live streams or additional, like I'll show up at study hall or whatever. So so you'll be going through things at your own pace, but then you will be using the community to communicate further. So yes, the live streams, I will be using these live streams on Thursdays as part of the course. There might be additional resources, additional live resources as well, like that study hall and perhaps some other things. But basically every week for the next, 14 weeks, I think is how long it is, I will be devoting each music masterclass to whatever the topic is that we're working on that week, to going over the assignments, go over the worksheets, go over projects that people are working on, answer questions, and explore some of these auxiliary topics here. So those auxiliary topics, yes, you can check that out. You will be able to hear me talk about the work that people have done without actually signing up for the course. And, if that piques your interest, you could always join later. But yeah, I'm not going to close the Music Masterclass. I feel like it still provides value for people to be able to check it out, even if you don't have full access to everything else. So, I talk fast during these sessions because I know how much material I want to cover, and I know I want to get it done in a certain amount of time. These lessons in the course are divided up into smaller chunks. I have them all lessons themselves neatly divided up, so the lessons don't need to be longer than like 15 minutes or so, and most of them are far shorter. There's a couple that are longer that I might need to break down more, so we'll see about that. I might redo a couple of these lessons, take advantage of the opportunity to do that. Like I feel like the one on rhythm and beaming and how we decide those rules, I feel like I maybe want to make another crack at that. We'll see. So, pinned at the top of the chat, you will see the link. And again, you should have gotten an email already with discount codes and so forth if you've previously signed up for the original version of the course or another one of my courses. I'm offering discounts there, so check your email there. If you're not seeing it, contact me offline and I'll hook you up. And I believe it was Dawn that specifically asked about that, so I am going to try to find you and get you the information you need. So hopefully this has whet your appetite for what we're going to be learning. It's a lot to be dealing with, but luckily a lot of it's familiar to many of you, so you can focus on the stuff that excites you. That's my goal here, is fill in gaps, have people learn some things they didn't already know while cementing their knowledge of what they already do know. So that's the show, and I hope to see a lot of you there, because it's I think really going to be a very special course. I mean, it's not just basic, right? I mean, I hope you got that sense here, even though that's the name of the course. Maybe I should have renamed it. I don't know. We'll see. But it's a solid foundation for understanding everything else that we're going to need to know about music going forward. And yes, and after this course is done, I'll do the same for the harmony course, and then I'll do the same for the counterpoint course, and I'll probably do another jazz piano course, maybe another jazz course. We'll see. So anyhow, really excited. You'll be hearing more from me over the next few days about what to do next, but first step is enroll, and then you'll get more information from me about where to go next, and things will get underway for real on Monday. All right. So thanks everyone, and hope to see you soon.